Hello, my health freedom loving friends. Misty Carlfeld here with Health Freedom Idaho. I'm here with Kristine McCreary, and we are bringing you a story that I think you'll find most interesting and also upsetting. As you know, Health Freedom Idaho has gotten active when it comes to medically kidnapped children by CPS, and we're very careful about what stories we bring to you, even though I'm contacted a lot by these stories. Parents that have these stories, but this one in particular you need to hear. Kristine, tell us a little bit about your son Brandon. I know that you have quite a story, being in the hospital.
Yes.
And it wasn't like I usually talk to people about what to do if CPS shows up at your door, but this story takes place in the hospital.
Yes.
And you were separated from your son, right?
Yes.
What did that look like?
It was shocking. It was horrendous.
How does that happen when you're there and you're with your son? What does it look like when they remove you from your son?
Very sad. It is extremely sad. You take your son in to get medical help with having the flu so severely bad that he cannot take in anything, not even Pedialyte. It was just coming right back out. I took him in 3 times. And finally, upon the 3rd time, they admitted him upon my urgency. And we stayed a week in the hospital. And at the end of that week, a doctor had thought it was malnutrition.
Okay, so let me understand. He had the flu.
Yes.
And you took him because why were you taking him to the doctor? Was he throwing up a lot?
Yes, he was throwing up. Nothing was being held down. All the food that he was taking in was just coming right back out. He was dramatically losing weight, and it was scary to look at him being that low weight.
Okay.
He is already a small young man, and he had lost anywhere, depending on what doctor you listen to, 12 to 15 pounds from December 17th to the date he was admitted, which was January 10th, 2019.
So that was a long flu. And in that time, you took him 3 times?
To the hospital itself.
To the hospital
yes.
itself.
Prior to that, he was taken in to see his regular pediatrician and the urgent care through his pediatrician's
And
office.
those times they did nothing?
No, they sent him back home. They said, it's just the flu, he'll be fine. Prior to that, though, he was just getting over bronchitis in December.
Okay, so then the 3rd time they finally admit him.
Yes.
And then what happened?
We stayed in the hospital for a week, and at the end of that week, a different doctor came on. It was very scary. The lady that had come in had told me they just want to talk to me, and my son did not want me to leave. He wanted me to stay and help him care for him, and I said I'll be right back, and I walked out of the door, and that was the last time I saw my son.
And who was that? Who was that asked to talk to you?
One of the doctors at the hospital, and she said that we are not separating you from your son, but CPS is here with a detective and they want to speak with you in another room.
They said, we are not separating you from your son.
Correct.
And then they separated you from your son.
Yes.
So you were never allowed to go back.
Correct.
To tell your son, hey, these are the things that are going on.
Correct.
Mommy's going to sort this out. Everything's going to be okay. Nothing.
No.
So as far as he's concerned, you just disappeared.
Yes.
And he's laying there in the hospital bed, having been sick for quite a long time, having lost weight, and Mama doesn't come back.
Right. And he had texted me. He has his own phone. I have mine. And he was wondering where I was.
Of course.
And they would not allow me to text him back anything. So for an hour and a half, almost 2 hours, he was by himself in that hospital room. And
Scared.
scared, yes, because he didn't know what was going on. And
Okay, let's go back to Brandon. And I understand that he had been sick for quite some time, but let's
Yes.
talk about, I think it's very important to talk about how he was at birth.
yes,
Okay, so tell us about Brandon when he was born.
he was small. He's 5 pounds, 15.2 ounces at birth.
I want you to know my babies were almost double that.
Yeah.
Like, they were gigantic.
Yeah.
So, like, I had the hugest babies. But he was tiny.
Yes, he was
and
tiny.
precious.
Yes. and healthy. They told me I could take him home that same day.
But Mom's tiny, so maybe you can see the difference right here. Yes. Mom's tiny and family's tiny. I've met your mom and your sister today, and so no surprise, you had a little boy.
Yes.
Yeah, tiny boy.
Yes. Joy of my life.
Joy of your life.
Yes.
And you knew that he was small, and of course he's going to his checkups. And what did the doctors say about his size?
He was healthy. There was nothing wrong with him. He was growing just fine. His height and weight were fine. He's just on the bottom of that low end of the growth curve.
Okay. And we all know, parents that have had children, about the growth curve.
Mm-hmm.
And so did he ever kind of do like this on the growth curve?
No, it was always
climbing.
Yep.
Which indicates
but always
health.
At the end, the low end,
sure.
Between the third,
fifth,
sometimes 1%.
Yeah, and that indicates health.
Mm-hmm.
And so what did the doctors say about his size? Was that addressed at some point?
Yes, at 18 months old, they wanted to rule out anything that, maybe failure to thrive or anything like that. And so they thought, well, he's not underweight, he's just small. And so they wanted to just add in a Pediasure and see if that would do anything. And it did, of course, and it jumped him up higher on the growth curve.
Oh, okay.
But they also had said that he is a very petite young man ever since birth. He's just going to be a small child, that he's just built that way. It is actually written.
Yeah, you brought a document today that says it's genetic.
It is, yes.
And that he's healthy.
Yes.
Okay, so we know that he started small, we know that he's healthy, we know that he's growing and he's gaining weight on the curve, so no ups and downs. And so those are all good signs. So now, what month was it when he got the bronchitis?
So that was in December of 2018. And he, normally when he gets sick, he just loses a couple of pounds. And as usual, most people do, especially children, especially if they're teens, because they're growing, their hormones, everything's changing, right?
Yeah, and bronchitis is not so easy to eat.
No, and he also has allergies and asthma, so that's a little bit harder on his body to handle. So he did take azithromycin per his doctor's orders, followed recommendations to the T, and he was getting better. And then after the first of the year, he got the flu, and that's when it hit him the worst.
Yeah, he really didn't have time to recover from the bronchitis.
No.
So then he got the flu. So is it the throw-up flu?
Yes.
Oh, mercy.
Both ends.
Oh, mercy.
Yeah.
Okay, so then it's hard to keep anything in.
Yes.
And so now he's got the flu, and you're realizing that he's lost weight. He's not keeping anything down. And did you go to the doctor's office or the hospital?
So I went to the doctor's office first, and they said, it looks like he might have the flu. They did not test him at that point yet. They sent him back home. And I monitored him, and I checked him, and I made sure he was okay, and he was eating and drinking very small amounts. And I'm talking maybe a handful of crackers, maybe 5 or 6 of those saltine crackers, and a little bit of water. And that was just coming right back out.
Man.
Nothing was literally staying down.
Right. So what was your next step?
So I took him into the urgent care that is part of his healthcare group. And urgent care said, yeah, it kind of looks like the flu, but we're not at a point where we're going to test him for it yet. But it kind of seems like that. The symptoms are there.
And did you say he's lost weight at this point?
Yeah, they did do the weigh-ins, and he had lost some weight. But they didn't do anything about it.
We need to support him, right?
Yeah.
They brushed it aside.
Yeah, they did. And so then I brought him in 3 more times to the ER. One of them was via ambulance because he was so struggling with being able to support himself getting up out of bed because he had lost that much weight. He was that fragile.
Oh, wow.
And the times that I took him into the ER, they would give him morphine, Zofran for his upset stomach, and fluids to rehydrate him. But they gave him morphine because of his stomach hurting so much from not being able to keep anything down, from throwing up so much, from, the flu itself is just damaging.
Right.
And they kept giving him the same course of treatment all 3 times. And on that 3rd time, they wanted him to be sent home again. And I said, absolutely not. I said, I need medical treatment to help my son. There is something else going on, or he has a very severe case of the flu. And at that point, they called his PCP, and they did agree, okay, we'll admit him, we'll see what's going on, but we're going to transfer him from this hospital to another hospital. So from our local hospital, they took him to a pediatric hospital.
Well, they took him from St. Al's to St. Luke's, right?
No, they just took him from our local St. Al's hospital that was closest to our home.
Oh, okay.
To the St. Al's Peds.
Oh, okay.
Hospital.
I didn't realize about that step
So,
there.
yeah,
okay.
there was that transfer there. And then after we were there for that week, that's when they transferred us from St. Al's Peds to St. Luke's Children's Hospital.
Okay. All right. So why did they feel that they needed to transfer him to St. Luke's Children's Hospital?
The doctor at the time had told me that the reason that they needed to transfer him was so that they could do a CF test on him, which is for cystic fibrosis. And other doctors had told me there's no way that this child has that. I'm not going to be concerned about testing him for that. There was one doctor previous that thought maybe we'll check it out and see where it's going, but not at this time. I wanted to learn more about it. I wanted to know because he has allergies to sulfa drugs and chemicals, and from what I was told, it's basically a sweat test on your arms, but they make a chemical that is almost like a burning sensation to make your body sweat. And they take that sweat and collect it and see if you have that CF, if your numbers are higher or lower or whatever it is. His hospitalist that was on that day said that they do not do that at the hospital. They would have to transfer him, and we need to rule out everything before we can just discharge him.
So at St. Al's, had he started to gain weight? Was he doing better?
Yes, he actually, when he was admitted, he was approximately 74 pounds. During his stay, he had lost weight in that stay. However, they still felt he was okay to be transferred to another hospital. There was doctors saying in there that he could go home because he was eating again. He was starting to gain weight again. He was up, ambulating around, walking the floors. I was walking with him. Things were going back to normal for him. His body was recovering. And he even saw a GI doctor in there who felt that same way. That, just with better nutrition from getting over the flu, it's just going to take some time. And he was getting better and things were fine. He even had physical therapy in the hospital at that point too. But this one doctor had really wanted to push the CF test, and we said after we talked about it, Brandon and I had talked about it, the doctor had reassured us that he wouldn't be allergic to the testing, the chemicals in the tests. So we went ahead with it.
So you agreed to the transfer to St. Luke's?
I agreed, yes.
Okay.
Yes, and Brandon did too, because he is he'll be 16 next month,
right.
So he has his own say in things.
Sure.
And they transferred us, and then that night that we were transferred, the hospitalist that was on that night at St. Luke's had said, I don't believe he needs the CF test.
Okay.
And ran blood tests, and all the blood tests came back normal that next morning.
Okay.
He even ran a pre-albumin test that was a malnutrition marker. That came back normal.
Okay.
So he went ahead. At that point, they had changed different doctors overnight. And we were separated that afternoon.
But on what grounds? He's getting better. He's getting stronger. He's gaining weight. The doctors are satisfied. They don't want to do a CF test. This looks like it's the setup for time to go home and continue your healing.
Well, that's what I thought too. And the doctor that had switched to a new round for the next morning was following the previous St. Al's doctor's orders and going ahead with CF test. However,
did he not read the notes from the previous St. Luke's doctor that said he didn't want to do the CF test?
She was following St. Al's orders.
Okay.
But we never had a chance to discuss much, as right after lunch, about approximately 1 o'clock is when the separation was starting to take place. And that's when the doctor came, a different doctor from a separate side of the hospital came in.
And they separated you.
And
They separated you. That was it.
Yes.
I bet you never even saw that coming.
No, I did not.
And why would
Not
you?
when you take your child in to get help from, he's already a small boy, that that when he gets sick, he's going to lose a few pounds, that you've taken him into the doctor's office, you've taken him into the urgent care, and you've taken him 3 times into the hospital.
What was their reasoning? What was on their documentation? You needed to be separated from Brandon. Why?
They thought I malnutritioned him. They thought that I was withholding food from him, that was the only possible way this child would be this sick. They put him in imminent danger, and they separated us at that point.
Did Brandon ever say that you were withholding food from him?
No.
No.
No, he in looking back in medical records, I was able to see some psych evals that they did while we were at St. Al's.
Did you know they were doing psych evals while you were at St. Al's, or did you discover this later in the
No,
paperwork?
I discovered it later in the paperwork because they only told me they were doctors coming in to check on him. One of them asked me, I just need to ask him some personal questions because he's of age. Would you mind if he walked outside for a moment and stepped out of the room?
Okay.
I said, no, that's fine. I didn't see a problem with it. Brandon can speak for himself. And in reviewing that, I come to find out he's a psychologist and asked Brandon exactly that question. And he said, absolutely not. My mom never withheld food from me. She's taken me in several times to get help. And now I'm finally here getting help.
Wow. And so then you even were subject to a psych eval,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And how did that come back?
Completely normal. I took a psych eval. There was an all-day psych eval, at least 9 hours. And it was a psych eval doctor who is very locally known that if you have something wrong with you, he will find it. And he could not find anything. He highly recommended that this was a mistake and that my son get back to me immediately, that he return home.
But that's not what happened.
No. CPS discredited the paperwork, said that that's not, he didn't have enough information to go off.
After a whole day with you?
A whole day with me, and I did all of the tests. It wasn't just one or two, it was all of them.
That's nonsense. So basically, it doesn't say what they want it to say, so they want to discredit it and subject her to a new test.
Yes, yes.
Which you're not going to comply with, I'm assuming.
I'm trying not to, but the court order says I have to.
Oh, wow. Okay.
But I'm trying not to.
Okay, so you're separated.
Yes.
And where did you go and where did he go? How does that,
So
what
it
happens
wasn't
from
just
there?
CPS that was in the room with me. They actually had a detective there. And the detective went to Brandon's room, grabbed my things, did not talk to him. And I'm sure at that point Brandon was shaken up. I was.
Yeah.
After interviewing me,
I should have brought that right away. We can cut this part out. Okay, Julie? Thanks. Okay.
So after the detective came back into the room and brought my things, she walked me to the elevators downstairs where she left me by myself and waited for me until I waited for my mom and my sister to come and get me.
Okay, and then what happened to Brandon from here?
At that point, he was in CPS's care entirely.
Sorry. It's okay. I know you've had to be so strong. And you know your fight's not over. And I just want to add something here. When a parent is crying and upset because they want their child, CPS demonizes that. When a child wants their parent, they call it attachment disorder. I just want to point out...
That is what they did. That is what they said.
Is that what they said?
They said that we had an enmeshment relationship.
Because they're close.
Because we were close, yes.
So you see how they demonize the parent-child relationship, a close bond of parent-child relationship. So what Kristine has had to do is not break down in front of CPS.
Exactly.
Not show any emotion. And, I mean, if you can imagine the absolute tearing that's going on in your heart and soul, but you know if you show those emotions, they'll demonize that and use that as a reason to not give you back your child.
Yes.
So, but that's not the case here.
No.
You can cry here. And if we're not careful, I'm going to be crying with you. So, Okay, so we'll try again.
Yes.
So where did Brandon go from there?
I have some family friends. They are our previous neighbors from when we first moved here. And it happens to be that they were available that night, and I called them, and they said, we will take him. We will watch him until you can get him back, because we know that you've not done anything wrong.
Were they already approved through the system, or
No.
you were able to just request then
Yes.
that and the judge agreed to that?
The judge, the CPS did.
Okay.
CPS did.
Okay, great.
And the thing was, is though his health was still so severe at the time that it got worse in St. Luke's. A big part of it was because we were separated. I'm sure of that.
Right.
But the other part was him still healing from the flu. The other thing that I do want to add in is that they did run a test at St. Al's when we were first there. The next day, the next morning when they did labs, and they tested. Excuse me. They tested him for mono, which also came back positive. So at one point or another, he had mono, but I don't know when it happened.
Did he get it at St. Al's? Did he get it at St. Luke's?
It had to have happened at some point between the urgent care time when I took him to St. Al's and the times in the ER.
Right. Well, and that's what happens when you go to a place of sick people.
Yes.
You tend to get sick.
Yes, and it was going around at the time, as well as strep. He did not have strep.
Uh-huh. Okay. So he was tested for that. Okay, so then his health was failing, and clearly it's not a stretch to say part of that had to do with extreme stress of
Sure.
Where's my mom?
Of course.
So, okay, so then your friends said that they would take him in.
Yes, they did. And Brandon knew them. He knew them. They knew he was small already, and they told CPS this. They told all the doctors this, and it didn't matter. They knew that Brandon was small. They knew that I'm a loving mom and that I care for him. It's not just love and compassion, it's I care for him. And I treat him very well. We're an Italian family. We always have food in the house. It's just how we are.
Yeah.
And he will eat and eat and eat and eat, how he's always been.
Yeah.
As long as he was growing, the doctors didn't think anything of it. They didn't have a reason to believe otherwise.
Yeah.
I'm going to back up just a bit to give you a little bit more information, but he's never had to have a blood lab test done.
Okay.
And in June of 2018, a doctor, because we had moved to Idaho at that time, decided that let's just do a baseline, and that was something that I wanted to have happen too. We wanted to know where he was at. And all those labs came back normal, with the exception of the vitamin D. Now, we are from Oregon. You don't get a lot of sunshine there, as I'm sure everybody could understand that. I got him on a supplement right away. The numbers started coming back up. By the time he was admitted, he was almost in that range. And by the time he was discharged, he was within that range for the vitamin D.
Okay.
So just to give you a tidbit in that, they did test his albumin. They tested all these things back in June of 2018, and none of them came back with any inkling relating towards malnutrition at all.
Okay.
His doctor knew he was thin at the time and just said, if we want to add in some more calories, let's just try him on Pediasure. Okay, so we tried him on the Pediasure. We then changed him to Ensure because he's an older child, and a teen. He can handle Ensure just fine. So it was 1 can of Ensure a day, and that's what he had been on. And in December, he weighed 85.2 pounds on December 17th,
Oh, okay.
2018. Again, still on that upward curve.
Right.
If you're going to look back on all of his weights, which they are not, and it's aggravating me because they are not taking in consideration this weight that he was in October or December of last year. Only because, why? I don't know. I couldn't tell you that answer. Only they have that answer. So I am including that in my documentation, of course.
Good. Yes.
But if you look at that weight of 85.2 pounds, and you take in consideration the weight that he was upon admission, depending, give or take a few scales, they could be off at different places, 12 to 15 pounds he had lost.
From what date to what date?
From December 17th to January 10th when he was finally admitted.
Wow.
Knowing he is getting over bronchitis,
Right.
knowing he has gotten the flu.
Right. And you kept going.
I did
And
kept
finally
going.
they admitted him.
Yeah, and that's what's aggravating to me is because he was not getting the help that he needed. And I cannot understand, I cannot wrap my head around why they were not helping him when I first brought him in, or the second time I brought him in, or even the first time I brought him into the ER.
Right.
Knowing I had previously brought him in already for the same thing. And I had that documentation from his PCP at the end of January when he went in for a checkup after he was released into foster care with our family friends. And his PCP actually states, yes, he was brought in that many times. That he was brought into my clinic, he was brought into urgent care, and he was brought in those 3 times to the hospital.
Wow.
But
Wow.
yet he still hasn't said anything about it either.
What do you mean he hasn't said?
His PCP hasn't given a reason as to what could they have done at the time.
Right. Right. Well, and I think that's a huge question.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so I want to back up a little bit. Once you're separated from your son,
Yes.
I need to clarify that first the child is in the custody of the sheriff.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Then Brandon went to your friends, and then how long was he there?
So those are our family friends.
Mm-hmm.
He is still the sheriff in that county. No, he's in the custody of CPS in the state. But these are family friends of ours. They were our old neighbors, and they loved him to pieces. And they want him back now if they could take him.
And why can't?
They had a flood in their kitchen, their dishwasher. They had a problem with their pipes under their dishwasher. And so there was some mold issues, and he couldn't stay there any longer. And so they moved him to another foster home. That was on May 4th.
So he was with them from January to May?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so then due to structural issues in the home,
Yes, yes.
he's now removed from the sheriff.
Yes.
Okay. And then he goes where?
I
Be-
will be
I just-
very brief with this one because
I
it
just
is
wanna,
a foster.
Let me just back up for just a second.
Sure.
Like, real life stuff happens in families.
Yes.
And I've heard of stories where they're doing a remodel in the kitchen because they had a huge flood and CPS wants to take their children. That's asinine.
Yes. I agree.
It's asinine. Like, we all have regular lives.
Yes.
I mean, if you're going to take children every time a life issue happens, none of us will have our children. The last interview I did with a man was because his boy child, the principal reported that the child was stinky. I have 2 boy children myself, and they are stinky. And here's another thing, like I have a washer and dryer. They were brand new washer and dryer. I don't know why it was turning out the stinkiest clothes for like 2 weeks. And I didn't know what was going on. I had it cleaned. I did this and that. Now, what if my child went to school with stinky clothes because I've got a washing machine issue? Does that mean CPS gets to come in and take my children? No. That is absurd. That's absurd.
Yeah.
So now the sheriff doesn't get to have your boy because there's a leak and there's some mold. Guess what? We can clean it up, we can fix it, and we stay together.
Mm-hmm.
The CPS should not be intervening in families this way, and really it's the government that's intervening in families this way, and that's against your 14th Amendment right.
Yes.
All right, sorry, I had to
No, that's okay.
handle
That's
that
okay.
for a second.
No, that's okay. The transfer to the other foster home was atrocious. It was a rundown mobile home that was literally peeling at the seams and paneling everywhere. It had blacked out windows, smoke filled as soon as you walked in from cigarette smoke, stains on the carpet. There was no food in the refrigerator except for what my son had brought over from his first foster home.
You were able to go in there and check out the home?
Yes, I did. I asked my CPS case manager if I could please be there during that transfer or have a visit. It was a visitation day anyway for me. She said, yes, he's there, go ahead, and I have some other paperwork to do at the office. I said, okay, great, thank you. Well, it was also one that I could have my mom and my sister attend to, which is his Nana and his aunt. And we all lived together.
Right.
Okay, we're a very close family. And I got there and he came. I literally closed our SUV truck door and was starting to walk up towards the front. Before I could get past the front of our SUV, he was running out to me and latched onto me like a little child would instead of a 15-year-old, because he was scared of where he was at.
So I just want to understand. So CPS has approved this rundown trailer with blacked out windows with no food in the fridge and smoke billowing out the door as a safer home than with mom,
Yes.
where he was always gaining weight
Yes.
and on the upward trend.
Yes.
Or at the sheriff's house, he's now CPS. This is what's so absurd about CPS. Because everything's up is down, everything's in is out. It's always the opposite.
Yes.
So now you're all the way down to your child is being subject to living in a trashy place such as this with no food, no safety, in terror, no mommy, and somehow this is better.
Yes. That's what they said. I immediately calmed him down and had him sit with his aunt and his nana while I reached out to CPS, who obviously never returned my call. I could not get back a hold of them, so I reached out to the chief of CPS and their supervisor. Supposedly they said they were in a meeting and that they were working on things. I never got off the phone with them. I continued to call again, and I did not speak with my manager, my plan manager, but the receptionist there, and she stayed on the phone with me, and she says, "Do not hang up with me. Let me see what I can do for you." And she reached out to my case manager, who told her that she is working on a new placement for him and that she will call me. Time went on. She finally called me. I told her I was not going to leave my son. I know that I can't legally take him, but I will not leave him there. And she said, "It's fine, you can just stay there." So I stayed there, and when she did finally call me back, she told me that she was expecting me to call her. She was expecting me to tell her this was not okay.
Because she already knows that you're a better mother than she is a caseworker.
Perhaps, yes. She also then said she was working on a new home. So where I live, in conjunction to his first foster home, is almost an hour away. Okay? This second temporary place that he was at is about a half an hour away. The third one that he was being transferred to is another hour away in the opposite direction.
Ugh.
I don't care where he is. I will go. I will visit him.
Of course.
I don't care where he is. I will always be there.
So what did your visitations start out like? Because I know now you have virtually nothing.
Yeah. It started
It's
out...
like they're weaning him away from you, that like trying to, make the detachment happen in this slow cutting off of time and emotion.
Yes.
And it's like if they just wean you away from your child or the child from the parent, then it's all going to be okay and you're not going to fight for your child.
No, I will always fight for my child. That was never going to be...
They seriously underestimate the power of a parent.
They seriously underestimated who they were speaking to. If anybody knows me, they know me as a mom who will always be there for her child, no matter what.
Yeah.
My family comes first.
Yeah.
I am honored and pleased that I can work from home and be there for my family. That I can literally work wherever I'm at.
That's
when we're on
amazing.
vacation, I can check my email. I can do a little bit of work if I have to.
Right.
But I made that happen.
Right.
No one else did but myself.
Right. Because
And
that's what we do for our kids.
We do.
That's what we do.
That's right.
And the government will never replace that.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No.
So my son, Brandon, he did get to that other foster home. The case plan manager met me at the house, the second house, and packed him up and all his things.
And that all happened in one day.
That all happened in one day because I was not going to let him stay
Right.
there.
Good for you.
I said absolutely
Good
not.
for you.
He was going to be sleeping on the floor on dirty sheets that was on one mattress that was on the floor that was stained and smelled. He did not take anything out of his boxes or totes or anything that he had, duffel bags, anything. He knew he wasn't going to stay there. He
That's
knew I was going
absurd.
to do something for him.
Right. That's absurd.
Yeah.
And atrocious. Okay. So
And
now,
I want to say, too, that this home is a home of a grandmother who is taking care of her grandson as a foster kid.
Wow.
So he's in this new home that's a husband and wife with several other foster home kids, including 2 of their own children. Now, my son has his own room, okay? We have a beautiful 4-bedroom, 2-bath home that he has his own room, his own bed, his own TV. Excuse me, everything is his own. Now he shares a room with another child, another foster kid. Most of the kids that they have in this home have actual abuse issues. Mine does not. There is no abuse or neglect, however which way you want to look at it, involved in our case whatsoever. And at this point, now he's starting to lose weight in the new foster home.
So where is he on the weight at this point? Because we know he'd lost weight with the flu and everything. So was he gaining weight now?
So he was, if you back up just a minute, he was admitted, in January until January 20, I believe it was the 24th. Okay, so he was there for a very good long portion of the month between two hospitals.
Okay.
When he was discharged, he was home at foster home for approximately a week and a half. He was then seen for a checkup through these specialists at the hospital who deemed him that he was not doing as well as they expected, that his heart rate was bouncing around too much, and wanted to place him back in the hospital again, where he served his second stay in the hospital. Excuse me. From what they believe was due to malnutrition. They were concerned about his heart. And when he was discharged, his discharge papers from that second stay state he had an eating disorder. He was put on a meal plan of 3,600 calories a day. And they were doing about bouncy back and forth, up and down meal plan with him to get him that far. He was having problems adjusting to those meal plans that they were trying to get him through while he was staying at the hospital. They would do 1,500, 1,800, they'd bounce it up to 2,800 calories a day. And then they'd knock it back down because they thought he was having problems or he was having an issue being able to eat that much at once. Bottom line is that's what he was discharged with.
An eating disorder?
And back with the foster family instead of with me. So if they had an eating disorder issue and a doctor thought, not only one doctor but two doctors, one was my psych eval doctor who did my testing, wanted us to come back in as a family to see how we interacted, felt that my son possibly had a low-end autism spectrum disorder that was also suspected by this, and I quote, unquote, eating disorder specialist, and I quote it because that's how the hospitalist quotes him.
Okay.
He is not a nutritionist. He is not a registered dietitian. He is just a pediatrician.
He's an eating disorder specialist.
That's what they called him, in quotes.
Oh, I see.
In his medical records.
Okay. All right. Interesting.
But I have yet to find any degrees that he has got or certificates that he's got. He is only a pediatric DO.
Okay.
So he has been placed on this meal plan back into foster care. He goes back to the foster care. Now, he started to gain weight at the first place, at the first foster family.
The sheriff.
Right, because they cook like we cook. Okay? If it was a simple meal plan that he needed to be on, that is the easiest thing anybody can do.
Right.
Even if you don't know how to cook, you can follow directions, you can follow recipes.
Right.
You can follow orders, you can follow recommendations. It's simple. And if that was the case, why is he still in foster care?
Right.
That's something I can do. That's something that the psychologist said I could do. He didn't deem me as having any issues.
Okay. So as far as the weight.
So he was gaining weight in the first foster family. Okay. Doing just fine. Transfers over to this final one that he's at right now.
Yeah.
And within a week, he was losing weight, at least 4 pounds. I reached out when I found that out because I was allowed to go to his medical doctor's office visits, being involved, having visits. I was seeing him twice a week. One time was 2 hours. The second time was 3 hours. One of the times I would have my family with me so that he could spend time with his entire family at the time. Always at a park or always doing bowling, golfing, something that he really liked to do. something that we could do as a family again.
And could you be by yourself at that point with him?
No, it had to be supervised. I have
Okay.
not been by myself with my son yet.
Okay.
So it'll be 6 months next month, and
And he's not allowed to text you?
No.
Not allowed to call you?
No.
Just these supervised visits?
Right.
Okay.
And then they did move us to having Skype calls where we could Skype 3 times a week for 30
Does that
minutes
mean you
each time.
can't see him in person anymore?
No, I could still
Okay.
see him.
Okay, good.
I could do both of those visits
Okay.
as well as the Skype, so it was going really well.
All right.
Okay,
It
things
felt
are
like-
turning around. Maybe
Sure.
I'm proving myself that I'm not this person that they think I am, or whatever they were thinking. And I thought, okay, things are going back to normal. He'll be back home soon. Everything will be okay. No. As soon as he was placed in this other home, this one that he's at now, they stripped me of any visitations with him.
So he's losing weight,
Yes.
and then they stripped you
Yes.
of visitations on top of that.
Yes. They filed criminal charges on me. I was arrested for injury to child.
But now CPS has had him all this time, so what are they accusing you of exactly?
Malnutrition. It comes back to malnutrition again.
But maybe I'm missing something. He didn't lose weight in your care, except for when he had the flu
When
and
he
you were
was
trying,
sick,
and
yes.
when he was sick, and you were
Yes.
trying to get the hospital and the doctors to pay attention.
Yes.
So you were actively doing something during that time
Right.
that he was losing weight.
Right. Correct.
So then once they get him, and he's in the 3rd foster home, and he's losing weight, and now they charge you with criminal neglect.
Yes.
Do you see the absurdity?
Very much so.
It's absurd.
It is. And they told him that. They did tell him that I was criminally charged with injury to child, and he has gone in front of the judge twice and has told her, the judge, he told her that Mom has never done this to me. Mom's always provided for me. She's always cared for me. She's extremely concerned as to what's going on. I was losing weight. I had the flu. That's why she kept bringing me back in. Nobody was helping me. And yet, his voice was not being heard. I do not know why. When I talk to people at my church, or you, or anyone else about this, they know that my son has a voice, and they know that it's his right. So why can't it be seen in court that same way?
So he's had a psych eval where he's said the same thing.
Yes, he did.
And he's said the same thing to the judge.
Yes, he did.
And what about any nurses, or do you have any documentation of nurses, doctors, and their interaction with him?
Yes, and he is actively, tentatively talking to them. In the CPS report, they also state that we mentioned this enmeshment issue, and that I was not involved as far as caring for him properly. And when you go through the nurse's notes, because I sent away for those and have those myself, they have always said, Mom asks appropriate questions. Mom is in proper care, caring for the child while in the hospital with the nurses, whether it was fluffing his pillows, which they did say that, whether it was readjusting him in the bed because he was so weak and tired, whether it was me up helping him walk those floors and getting him that exercise that he needed per the PT recommendations. Whatever it was, I was there, I was helping him, period. And that has been said by every single nurse in documentation.
So tell me about this criminal, this criminal claim against you. This is a felony, right?
It is a felony, yes. It's not even a misdemeanor. They're stating it's a felony, injury to child.
So what is it they present as their reasoning for this accusation and this charge?
We are attempting to collect the discoveries,
Okay.
and they have not shown that yet.
Okay.
And their time is up.
Their time is up.
Their time is up. Their time is up now. They were supposed to show me those discoveries now.
Oh.
So, in speaking with everyone that is involved in this, I'm finding the next step to take after this.
Okay. So, and you did go to your first hearing, and what happened there?
So that was for criminal? Which one are you talking
Yeah,
about?
for your criminal. Mhm.
So that one was basically just saying not guilty.
Right.
It's just getting to that next phase to go to. And
Right.
the interesting part about the way that happened is I never even got to say not guilty. The judge looked at me, looked at the paperwork, and moved it straight to prelim and told me my next date in court.
Okay.
And when I got out of there, I do have an attorney at the moment, and he had said he'd never seen that happen in court before. They never just say, okay, not guilty, and move you to prelim.
Interesting.
So that was an interesting part too.
Yeah, that is interesting. So have you been able to take I've seen your data.
Yes.
I mean, we were talking huge binders. This mom has done her research. You know, she's looked up everything she can possibly look up. She has new marching orders as of today of the
Yes,
things
I
that
do.
she's going to, now that she knows.
Yes.
Whatever she knows to do, she's doing it. And I think that's what tugged at my heartstrings so much about this particular call when she called me was, this is a mom that's ready to fight for her kid. She wants her son home with her family. And everything that she's done up until now says, I'm a good mom. I mean, we all have family and life things going on. I mean, that can't be criminalized. No. If you have a child that is small, but you're nourishing him and you're nurturing him. I've seen pictures today of a sweet, precious boy that loves and adores his family. He's done everything that other little kids do. He's gone fishing. He's gone to the pumpkin patch. I mean, he's had birthdays. I saw a picture of him with a big box of cupcakes.
That was a cakewalk that he did when we were visiting out on the coastline, and he did a cakewalk in the community center, and it was during Christmas time, and he won the cakewalk, so he got to take home a box of his favorite red velvet cupcakes.
Oh my gosh! He's gone on vacations. You know,
yes.
he is.
And that is, not to interrupt, but that is another big thing that they say is that I've sheltered him so much. And that is not true. We love to be outside. My son
That's because
is
you're
an
a
outdoor.
homeschool mom.
I am a homeschool mom. Yes, I am.
Because she's
yes,
a homeschool mom.
I'm a homeschool mom, and I am proud of it. He is going to be 16 and graduating high school. And I'm not just saying that because I'm his mom. I'm saying that because it is educationally proven that he is that level of education. He was in Connections Academy when we were in Oregon, and he was in the Gifted and Talented programs for those that excel. He had skipped 2 grade levels and graduated 8th grade when he was 12.
So just engage for a second and think with your mind, your logical mind. Does this sound like an abusive mom? Does this sound like a disengaged mom? Does this sound like a mom who isn't all in for her kid, who's just neglectful, that just doesn't care? Because she has felony charges facing her for that very thing. And that's what I mean. What's in is out, what's up is down. They're trying to shift everything to where you can't actually believe what you're seeing or what you're hearing. You're questioning yourself right now because you're thinking there must be something. Drug use?
No. No drug use, no alcohol use, no nothing.
Any other felonies?
No. I've never even had CPS called to me once.
Any other misdemeanors?
No.
Oh, she's a mom. And they're going to try to make you believe when you hear these stories that there has to be something else. And you know what? The stats show that there doesn't have to be something else.
And I will say this too, is they are not letting him go to his Bible camp studies, his summer camp.
Wait a minute, didn't they say that he needed to go to a camp?
Yes.
They were recommending that he went to a camp.
They did.
Up until it was your church's Bible study camp.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I paid for it. I did the registration papers, and I gave them copies, and the CPS caseworker and his new foster mom both called the youth pastor and talked to him on 2 separate occasions. And after, now, mind you, youth pastor and everyone at my church, and I mean everyone at my church, knows what is going on. And they had made him, meaning the youth pastor, feel so conflicted, and these are his words, he is so conflicted that he wanted to get to know him better before having him come to summer Bible camp.
And I would assume that Brandon knew that he was going to this camp.
He was thrilled to know he was going. He wanted to be able to be himself again and not have people looking over his shoulders or wondering what he's doing.
With his church family.
With his church family, yes.
And so, I mean, it sounds like you have an amazing foundation of people that are supporting you.
And this is a fairly newer, not so much newer now, but we had just found this church in December. He had gotten sick, of course, as I said. He had
Oh,
bronchitis.
right about
okay?
the same time.
Okay, and he had gotten the flu. Okay, we were separated. I started going to church, in January again, and I met this wonderful group of people, and from the top all the way down, youth pastors and pastors that speak every Sunday, and they cannot believe that this is happening. I even have church members coming with me to my court date because they don't believe that this is happening. So they're being supportive in that aspect as well.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. I think this is very important when you show community support.
Yes.
in
Yes,
these
especially
things.
when they feel that I myself am isolated, that I do not have
Right.
community resources.
Right. And now you have even a larger community
Yes, I
support.
do.
So
Yes,
I
I
can't
do.
wait to show that. Okay, so is there anything else? I'm trying to think of the things you've told me. Is there anything else that we want to make sure that people know about?
I am a single mom, and my ex, we were not married.
Right,
Okay,
right.
This is
This is
another big
important.
part
It
of
is.
it, yes. Pushed me to abort my son. His entire family did. I said absolutely not. And I could not believe that that's what anyone would say. That is murdering a child in my mind, in my eyes. He had said that he is not wanted. His family, like I said, pushed me to abort him. They said his mother told me that it is not appropriate at this time, that you guys are too young, and that maybe in a couple of years down the road you could try again, but not right now. Okay, we were in our mid-20s to late 20s, full-time job, full-time supporters. There was no reason for that.
Okay, so you weren't 15 in
No.
high school, or
No.
not that would make it okay, but
No,
it would.
I'll tell
like
you one
maybe
thing,
there's some
I-
sense in
no,
what they're saying.
No.
You're grown
even
up.
the teens that I know, and I know teen families,
Yeah.
they are more supportive together than he has ever
Wow.
been.
You're grown up. You have a job. He had a job.
Yes.
Okay.
So I had Brandon, and I told him he needed to be involved however he wanted to be, but I'm not going to force it. You can be there if you don't want to be, whatever. Gave him the option again at 2 months, when Brandon was 2 months old, and upon urgency from his family and his attorney at that time, because that is what he told me anyway, that he decided he would see Brandon, but he was busy camping with his buddies and wouldn't be able to see him until the end of those 2 months. So camping with your buddies is more important than seeing your own child that happens to be a boy, your own son. Yeah. So I said, okay, that's fine. Just let me know when you want to see him then. He gave me a date. He came to visit and didn't know what to do with him. Didn't know how to change a diaper. Never held a baby before in his lifetime, and that is what his mother told me. He did not come by himself. He had to come with his mom. My son was very upset during that time. I actually took him in to see the doctor. I wanted it recorded somewhere that it was an upsetting moment for him. My neighbors heard him being upset and came over from across the street to make sure that he was okay, because they heard him crying. They heard him not being a happy, laughy, giggly baby that he normally always is, and wanted to know who this other man was with this other lady in my house, and wanted to know if we were okay, because he heard the cries. They didn't know what was going on. And I explained them to my neighbors so they understood. And so after they left, my neighbors came back that night to make sure he was okay after that. And they also urged me to take him into the doctors as well. But I took him in regardless of what my neighbors told me. And so it is on record. But my son was fine. He was not hurt or anything like that. He was just upset because it was not a natural feeling. And that was when he was 2 months old. Now, my son is 15. Almost 16. Not once did I ever hear from him again, or his family.
Wow.
At that point, he had actually abandoned us. He abandoned us during pregnancy. He abandoned us during those 16 years, almost 16 years of his life. And I never went after him for child support. I never put him on the birth certificate. I could do it myself. I didn't need the help. I did reach out to my son during different times in his life, different stages of his life, and asked him, do you ever want to get to know him? I could find him. I could hire
Right.
police department, whatever. I could find him one way or
Right.
another.
If that's what your
If
son wanted.
that's what he wanted, yes,
Sure.
I would find that. But my son said, no, Mom, I know who loves me. I know my family. I know my friends. I know who I am. I don't need that. There's nothing missing. You have to have that person in your life to feel that missing piece, is what he was telling me. And I said, okay. And we had that talk again right around when he turned 14 years old. Said the same thing. I said, okay. Now we're in the CPS case, okay? I told CPS that I'm not going to tell you who his father is because he's not his father. He's never been involved. And they told me, that's fine. You don't have to tell us. I said, wonderful. They left it at that. I said, he is not in his best interest. And that is what I told them. Because CPS, as everybody knows, always says we do what's in the child's best interest. Well, if you want to do what's in the child's best interest, you will not go after this person to do anything because he is not in his best interest. Excuse me. A couple of hearings go through with the CPS case. And I'm on the stand. The only one time that I'm on the stand, and that was during adjudicatory hearing. And I was asked what his name was so they could find him. And I'm not going to lie, I have nothing to hide, but I am trying to protect my son at the same time. I had to tell him his name. A couple months went by. It took him a couple of months. They did find him. We had another hearing. He showed up to court along with his new either wife or fiance. That's still a gray area because they do wear, both of them wear rings, but they take them off at court. She is from another country, by the way, too. And his mother was also there. He could not look at me. He looked down at the ground the entire time. CPS says, we're going to try and have a relationship here between my ex and my son. My son knew this was going to happen because I was telling him. I was able to have a conversation with him. His guardian ad litem told me that I should call him and tell him, so I did. We had a special Skype call that night. Now, he tried to reach out to his attorney, he meaning my son. He has a public defender. She did not call him back for a week and a day later, meaning that was after that next court hearing. During that court hearing, the end final decision was that CPS told the judge that they would take this slow approach and make it just phone calls first between my ex and my son. And that was not the case. Less than an hour after court, it was supposed to be my time to Skype with my son and I couldn't reach him. I didn't know what was going on for 4 hours. And of course, that's concerning. Okay, but I know he was with the first foster family, so I know perhaps maybe they just went out, they were doing something special. I wasn't too terribly worried just yet until that second hour approached and I wasn't able to find out anything because that's not like them. You know, perhaps an hour would go by, they're busy people, they take them out and do things, okay? They had family game nights like what we do, okay? So that was not the case. They were told not to contact me because Trevor was there.
The dad.
Yes, visiting my son. Not just by himself, but with his mom and this new fiance or wife of his as well.
So what happened to taking it slow?
Yeah, exactly right. So CPS, first caseworker I had, and the new one that the social worker and the case plan managers, who they are, called foster mom and wanted to speak with my son directly. Asked my son, do you want to see him? He's come a long way. And Brendan said no and got very nervous. And not only did my son tell me that, but foster mom did too. And they pushed it again. They said, well, I want to talk to him some more. Put him back on the phone. So CPS gets on the phone with him again and says, well, not only has he come a long way, but he's required by the courts to make an effort. When you're throwing these things at my son who's not understanding really all of this, he's a good kid, he has no idea what's going on here. So he said, okay. And foster mom calmed him down and said, okay, we're going to get through this. I'm not leaving anywhere. I'm staying with you. And thank God she did. All of them showed up. So it's 2 CPS workers, my ex, his mom, and his fiance, wife, whoever she is. All showed up and met with him and spoke with him for over 2 hours. and completely disregarded my son's feelings for it at all. At my next visit with my son now, we did have our Skype call that night. We did have our conversation that night.
And I'm sure he had a lot to say.
He did not want that to happen at all. He wanted to know where the courts got off allowing this to happen.
Right.
He didn't understand. Now, his attorney at that time still had not called him back. That next day is when...
Your son's attorney?
My son's attorney.
Your son's attorney hasn't called. So your son reached out to his attorney?
A week before.
Okay.
Because he knew this was going to happen.
Okay.
But he did not know he was going to be meeting him in person. He knew that he was going to...
That was just sprung on him.
Yeah.
That was just sprung
Yes.
on him.
Yes. So, my sons and my...
With no attorney prepping him on this is...
Correct.
What to do, and this is how it's going to go.
Or take in consideration his feelings. If my
Right.
son said no, that means no.
And you didn't know either. So there was no preparation.
No.
This is completely sprung on him.
Yeah.
This dad that never wanted anything to do with him.
Correct.
And now he's facing that. When you said, well, you know, CPS mom tried to comfort him. Can anybody comfort you like your own mom? Thanks, CPS mom. That's really nice. But I need my own mom. My birth mom. The one who's loved me, gave birth to me, fed me, enriched my life. That's who I need comforting me. So now he's got CPS mom appointed by the state, supposedly holding his hand and walking him through a very traumatic experience, trying to meet his birth dad, his bio dad, that didn't want anything to do with him.
Correct.
He doesn't have the support system of mom and grandma and aunt that he's used to having. He's got CPS mom. I mean, you said thank God for that she didn't leave him. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess. Mm-hmm. But, she's not even second best. She's like, not to take away from what CPS moms do. This is not their fault, okay? People who are taking care of children, I appreciate them, the ones that do it well.
Yes.
But Brandon should never have been facing this decision without the comfort and support of his own mom, grandma, aunt, his family that he lives with day in and day out. Now he's thrown into this without that support.
Correct.
And trying to just manage. Just trying to manage. I mean, this kid has had so much thrown at him.
Yes.
And, I mean, adults can't even cope with this, let alone a 15, almost 16-year-old young man.
Yeah.
Who's just trying to find his way. You guys remember what it was like to be 15, 16 years old. You're just trying to figure yourself out. And it's hard enough in the comfort and care of your own family, let alone this mess, this nightmare that this child has had to endure.
Well, and ever since we were separated too, he's gone into a shell. So they also see that that's abusive on my behalf.
Wait a minute.
Yes, that's exactly what I said. You heard me right. They think that because Brandon's in a shell, after we were separated, that somehow that's my fault. That that's abusive. When that's not.
See what I mean?
Clearly that is not. He's turned into a shell because we were separated.
Right.
And I think anybody could understand that.
Well, I would say it might have something to do with the fact that he's not listened to when he does say something.
Correct.
Who continues to speak up for themselves, especially a 15-year-old boy? Why would he continue to speak up for himself when he's not being listened or valued?
So in my own son's words, at our next visit, which was just a couple of days later, which thank goodness it was just a couple of days later, we needed our time together. And I brought our family too, so he could have time with them too. And he said, Mom, that was so underhanded of them to do. And those are his words, underhanded.
Well, he's a smart boy.
Yes. And he does not want to see that happen again. However, it has. They, not in person, but because he doesn't live in the state, but in several phone calls. And they are very short phone calls because they don't know how to interact with each other. He doesn't know how to talk to my son.
Because he doesn't know him.
No. And my son has told me that on a few of their Skype calls, in order to remember what he has talked to Brandon about, he writes things down because he can see him writing things down. So my son's told me that.
So he's taking notes, but he is suing you for custody.
He is suing me for custody.
He's suing you for custody. So now you have CPS trying to remove your custody rights.
Yes.
And you have a criminal felony charge.
Yes. And
you have your ex, who's
Correct.
never been involved in Brandon's life, suing you for custody.
Correct. My son has also told me that, he's not one that you have to tell something twice to go do, right? So what he can't understand is why does he have to tell adults, people that are officials, judges, court-appointed attorneys, CPS, official people. Why does he have to tell them more than once what he wants to have happen? Why does that have to, when they're adults? Adults should only have to be told once. Children, you have to tell them, what, once, twice, 3 times maybe? Maybe even more than that for some of them, okay? Let's just be honest. But with my son, he's told me, Mom, you didn't tell me one time and I'm going to do it. Because he's a good kid. He never has gotten in trouble. So he can't understand why adults don't listen to him the first time he says something. And I completely agree with him. Why aren't you people listening?
Right. Right.
And if you're that concerned, read his medical records. Because if you had truly read his medical records, that 13-page CPS report that I have is not true. And I have over 183 pages that says otherwise. I just need to get that back in front of the judge.
So really, in this story, I'm hearing what a health advocate you've been for your son. And now he's in a place where he doesn't have his mom being his health advocate.
Correct.
So in my view, it looks to me like his health is more at risk now than it ever has been before.
Yes, it is, because now he is, okay, in the hospital they had him on these Ensure drinks, okay? They were trying to get him to drink protein shakes too, okay, which, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. That's great. They never once gave him a protein shake until that last transfer date, an hour before we were transferred. So that's also in medical records too. We have that. But Brandon eventually moved on to just having his meal plans, and that was it. All his nutrition was coming from his meals, all from food. No supplements, no energy drinks, nothing, well, not energy drinks, but the protein shakes, nothing like that. Now, because he's lost weight being in this other foster care, they put him on another type, it's not Ensure, it's another type of supplement drink to get the proper nutrition. Instead of having it all come from food. They do not take him out to go do things. They do not treat him as a family member. Honestly, he's just another paycheck in their pocket.
In what way? Because you were mentioning the games and that they go and do things.
Okay, so this is the other foster family, though. This is the one he's currently in.
Okay.
Okay, the first family is very family-oriented.
Okay,
it's like ours.
That was, sorry, I got confused. So that was the family that did game night and
Yes.
ate. And okay, so now the foster family number 3 that he's in
correct.
does not treat him like a family member.
No.
He's holding up. He's communicating less.
Yes.
He's losing weight.
Yes. Now, he does associate with the other foster family kids that they have. There's one that he shares a room with that they play cards with when the kid comes home from school. Fairly the same age as my son, so they get along okay. But that was another thing, is that he doesn't get along with kids his own age. The CPS was saying that he's just not social enough. Well, my son's always gravitated towards that older crowd. Always.
Right. Because he's more mature and he's above his grade level. And
correct.
Right. I've seen that before.
Yeah.
So what is he doing for education?
I am homeschooling him. They are still allowing me to do that. So every week I see him now once a week because of the criminal charges. I see him once a week at CPS's office in one of those tiny rooms. It is not even one that has a window. It is not the way to spend time with your child at all. You should be able to take them out and go to a park like we were, because he was active with me at the park. We would kick the soccer ball around. I would pitch him the ball so he would bat. He does have exercise-induced asthma, so it's not like he's going to go off running around. He's going to be right there, but I do make sure he gets exercise, and we do love to be outside. So whether it was a hike or a walk around the park or whatever it was, we were always outside during our visits.
Okay, so this is going to be like my last question.
Okay.
If you had 2 minutes in front of the judge, what would you say to the judge?
Rather, what would I say to the judge?
Look right here in the camera, like you're looking right at the judge.
I would demand my child back.
What would you say? Say it.
I would tell the judge that this has been a terrible misunderstanding from a doctor who should have never did what she did. She should have gotten to know the actual true facts if she suspected anything. And I want my son back. There is no reason that this should be happening. People need to listen to what we have to say. I have proof, and I need it to be shown. I did not have the greatest attorneys in the beginning. I do now, and I'm also being an advocate for myself with the proper help from my wonderful groups that I've met. And I have the proof to show you if you have the time. But I am not going to stop fighting for my son, period.
That just gave me the shivers. Okay, one last thought. I think that the doctors should have spent more time diagnosing her son,
Yes.
rather than spending all this time accusing mom. It sounds like there's some underlying things, like maybe celiac or things that they haven't diagnosed.
They did have a celiac test, and it did come back with celiac markers, yes.
But they didn't diagnose him officially.
No.
Right. So I feel like they are maybe leaving some things out medically and focusing on accusing the mom instead. And again, I feel like that's backwards. And it's happening more than you know. That's why I'm bringing you these stories, because it's happening more than you know. And they're trying to isolate these parents and isolate these families and isolate these children so they feel alone and like they have no support and this isn't happening to anybody else, but that's not true. So please listen. Sort through the propaganda that you've been told to believe about why children are removed from their homes. And listen to the facts.